Okay, now we have come to the next topic in our learning, which is basically about marketing research. So it is still in your module 2 of module 2 presentation, and we are going to discuss this topic now. Okay. All right. You may recall this model here, the one that we discussed some time ago, last week actually to be more precise. And there are a few elements in here that that basically are involved in a modern marketing system. Okay, so we have the company. If we are here, the company. We try to convince our consumers, and in doing so, we work with the marketing with marketing intermediaries. They are basically our distributors, resellers, who also work with our competitors. Okay, and in our attempt to create, communicate, and also deliver value for customers, we also work with the suppliers. Okay, and our suppliers may also be working with our competitors, so kind of embedded enemies. Okay, and on top of that, we have what we call as the major environmental forces that affect everybody. Okay, and we also discussed last week that these guys here plus publics are what we call as the micro environmental actors. Okay, whilst the major environmental forces include, as we discussed before, they include the political, economic, social, cultural, and technologies. Okay, right. Now everything in here, from information perspective, from marketing information perspective, can be researched. Okay, and in fact, they provide us with insights. Okay, they help us getting the insight on the new trends in the market. Okay, right. So that's basically a brief introduction about marketing information. So when we discuss about marketing information, we will go back to this model. Actually, they are the ones that we will research. Okay. Now we often discuss about insights. Okay, what is insight actually from marketing perspective? Well, if we talk to a number of people, they may offer different definition about what insight is. Okay, and this is what we offer in terms of what customer insight is. Okay, a fresh understanding. Okay, so you could say that what we mean by fresh understanding. You could say we look at the customers from a different perspective. We have a new lens of looking at the customers, let's say. Okay, so fresh understanding of the customers and marketplace based on marketing information. Okay, so we say that it has to be based on marketing information. Okay, and that will become the basis for us to create customer value, and then we can create the relationship with the customers. Okay, so that's what we mean by customer insights, right? A fresh understanding, fresh lens of the customers and marketplace. Okay, and again, we use them to create customer value and relationship. Okay, so if we receive information, any information out there that we receive, probably in relations to marketing activities, so there we can also label them as marketing information. They may not be insights. Okay, because some information is probably nice to know. Okay, they're just nice to know. Okay, yeah, it's good. Yeah, we know it. Okay, now we know it. It's good, right? Well, that's not what we mean by customer insights. Okay, customer insight basically helps us building or creating, communicating, and delivering value for customers. so that we can build relationship with the customers. All right. Now, the other thing I'd like to highlight is the marketing information system, which is basically a system that includes people and procedure for assessing the information needs, developing the needed information, and helping the decision makers, all right, to use the information to generate and validate actionable customer and market insights. Okay, so that's the marketing information system. Okay, the next thing I'd like to discuss is basically about the marketing information sources. There are several sources of information that we can use. The first one is internal database. Okay, they include financial report, customer feedback, and CRM, or customer relationship management. Okay, and the second one is competitive marketing intelligence. They include our competitors' annual report, for instance, competitors' announcements, competitors' media release, competitors' actions, activities. Right? They give us the what we call as the competitive marketing intelligence, including the trade exhibition. Okay. And the last venue to get the information is the marketing research. All right. So, in brief, there are the three sources of marketing information. Okay, the internal database, competitive marketing intelligence, and marketing research. Now, out of these three, the first one that that you want to look at, that you want to go through, is actually the internal database. So before you look at the others, look at the internal database. And in fact, the internal database actually helps us answering some of the issues that we may have. Okay, and the internal database in many cases also help us to detect whether we have issues or not. All right. And competitive marketing intelligence are basically the other thing that we can also do before we spend our marketing research dollars. All right. Now, this slide here actually shows us that a lot of decision making can be supported through marketing research. Okay, so starting from the segmentation decisions, customer selection decisions, brand, right through integrated marketing communication decision or promotion decision down here, we can research all of them. Okay, so any marketing decision that we try to make, we can make the decision. We can research those things. Okay. All right. Now, let's have a look at the marketing research process. Okay. The first step is basically about defining the problem. This is actually quite fundamental for us. Without us understanding the research problem, without us understanding the problem, it's hard for us to devise a plan. And if you have problem with devising a plan, we'll also have problem implementing the plan, as well as interpreting and also reporting the findings. Right? So very simple in terms of marketing research process: define the problem, and then develop the research plan. Implement the plan, implement the research plan, and interpret and report the finding. Okay, defining the problem. It is probably the largest task in the research process. And in my own experience, when it comes to marketing research, I spend most of my time actually digesting the data, digesting numbers, and so on and so forth to help me define the problem. So it is one of the critical things that we need to complete. Now, one of the things that I'd like to highlight in terms of defining problem, we normally start with the business issues. Okay, so why do we do research? Well, basically we do research because we want to make decisions. we don't have the information that we need, so we need to get the information so that we can make a better decision, a better quality decision. Okay, so we don't do research because we have the research budgets, but we do research because we want to solve the problem for the business. Okay, now so we need to start with what we call as understanding the business issues. Okay, now in terms of understanding the business issues, we normally look at the financial report. For instance, again, we go back to the financial report. Okay, so let's say if our sales, if we didn't achieve our sales target last period and the previous period and the previous period and so on and so forth, there is a symptom that we may have issues. Right? Now, by the way, I put issues / opportunities because sometimes it is also an opportunity, a hidden opportunity that we need to reveal. Okay, so for instance, at some point of time, we may find that our business grows very fast. Our sales may achieve more than target, and it is consistently doing that well. So there may be hidden opportunities that we need to research so that we can grab the opportunities before the others do. Okay. So again, in other words, it starts from business issues. Okay. Defining research problem starts from the business issues. Yeah, I'd like to highlight that because what we do in marketing research basically goes back to the business. Okay, so marketing research in here is a tool for us to add value to our business. All right. Now that helps us to what we call as the problem statement. Okay. Yep, we have problem with sales in here. All right. Let's say declining sales trend, and then the problem and the possible problem statement include would be how can we retain customers, for instance. That could be one of the things. Why do we lose sales? So one of the things that we also need to challenge is basically our gas in here. Why do we have problem? Okay, our gas. Why? We have problem with sales, right? Are we losing customers? Well, if we are losing customers, then the problem statement here would be how we could retain the customers, all right? So from that business problem, we convert that into a problem statement. So to make it clear, to confirm that this is the problem. And the next step is actually to define the possible research questions or research problem, okay? So here we could say, from this statement, we could say, well, is our customer satisfaction poor? Is our customer loyalty decreasing? Okay, or is our competitor offering something better or something more superior than what we are offering? Okay, we know that our competitors just launched a new product, for instance. Okay, or is our product quality decreased? We have suffered in terms of product quality or perceived product quality, right? So that's basically helps us understanding research questions. Hopefully this helps you to understand converting business issues to or opportunities into problem statement and also possible research questions, okay? All right, so from marketing research perspective, we have the this process as well in terms of helping us define the problem and research objectives. Okay, so marketers would normally do exploratory research to help them define the problem. Okay, if they have little information, for instance, in some issues, they may conduct exploratory research to help them understanding the problem better. Right now, the finding of that of this exploratory research actually to suggest further research, okay, to validate what they found in the exploratory research. Okay, a typical study that marketers normally do is the qualitative study in terms of quality, in terms of exploratory research. Right, the qualitative study that marketers may do includes focus group discussion or observation, or probably ethnographic studies, for instance, right? Or in-depth interview or case studies method, basically. Okay, so that's exploratory research. With exploratory research, we actually have the opportunity to probe our research subjects, so that we have a better idea in terms of what's happening. Okay. Then the next one is basically descriptive research, which is basically helping us to describe the issues, right? As the name suggests, it helps us describing the issues. Okay. Now, describing the issues in here actually helps us to validate the issues. Okay, we not in here we use quantitative research methods, basically. Okay, in the quantitative research methods, we normally use survey technique or questionnaire. We spread the questionnaire, for instance, that helps us to validate the issues. Okay, and the last one is causal research. With causal research, we try to find out the cause and effect relationships. Right, we test the hypothesis. Okay. Here we normally do experimental research. Okay. All right. So the next step is basically to research to develop the research plan. Let's look at the key issues that we need to include in our research plan. Okay. The first thing that we need to decide is the types of data. What types of data that we need to collect? So we need to define clearly what data, the data that we need to collect. Okay, and there are two types of data. The first one is secondary data. With secondary data, we actually talk about something that the information that has been established by another organization. Therefore, the data is basically research for a different purpose, right? So it is not customized to our marketing problems. Okay, that's secondary data. Okay. The second type of data is primary data. In the case of primary data, the information is collected for a specific purpose to address specific issues. Okay. Now, of course, with primary data, we expect to answer the questions that we have in our business. Okay. Now, between these two, I would personally recommend you to conduct the secondary data research. The reason for that is there are at least two important reasons in here. The first one is it is normally available for free. Okay, so we just need to type in our Google search box, or we just need to look at our internal secondary data, the internal reports such as financial data or financial report, for instance, or customer complaint data or CRM data, for instance. That helps us a lot. And the second thing is basically, the second reason is basically it helps us answering part of the problem. So after we digest the secondary data, it helps us tightening or detailing, if you like, our research questions when it comes to primary data. Okay, and primary data again is quite expensive. Therefore, before we spend the research money, let's make sure that we actually tighten the research questions before we go to marketing research. The second thing that we need to decide is the research method or research technique. There are two groups of research techniques that we can use. There are two types of research technique that you can consider: qualitative and quantitative. As the name suggests, qualitative research basically generates the outcome in the format of words or opinions, and in some instances, if we use projective technique, it may also explain pictures that the customers associate us to, for instance. All right, so they are in the format of words or opinions. Okay, and this study normally involves a small number of individuals. Okay, and the typical techniques, specific techniques that we can use include the focus group discussion, okay, in-depth interview, and observation. In the case of focus group discussion, we assign a moderator who is normally a well-trained moderator, and normally we also have the research assistant to help taking notes and the other logistical functions in the when the FGD or focus group discussion is conducted. Okay, and the moderator will normally have 6 to 10 maximum people maximum in the focus group discussion room, and they will ask questions, probe the answers from the respondents. Because that is the beauty of running qualitative study, okay? Or in-depth interview, where sometimes the respondents may be hard for us to find. They are very specific. Let's say if you want to interview the perception of the CMO, for instance, Chief Marketing Officers. Well, these guys are busy, right? Their perception about a certain brand or a certain service, for instance, okay? These guys are busy. So it's not easy to find them. Let's make an appointment to conduct the in-depth interview. Okay, and the next one is observation, where we observe the customers in their natural environment, in their own environment. Okay, and one of them is one of the specific techniques is what we just discussed before, the ethnographic study. So we blend into the customers. Okay, we tail the customers, and we take notes and we observe in detail. Okay. The second technique is the quantitative technique, where it involves a lot of people, normally 100 plus, and in terms of deciding number of people or number of sample, basically we use statistical tool. It meets the statistical tools as and the information is normally presented in the format of stats, such as mean score or percentage, for instance. Okay, and typical technique include the survey and questionnaire. Okay, right. Secondary data. Two types of secondary data: internal and external. Internal secondary data includes this guy here: customer component report, a financial report, your sales and profit report, and of course your CRM report. Okay, customer relationship management report. External includes anything such as the ABS, Austrian Bureau of Statistics, industry reports, okay, journal, periodicals, books, and so on and so forth. Okay. Primary data collection, we have 3 types of primary data collections here. The first one is observational research. They include, gathering primary data by observing the relevant people. Okay, how they action and so on and so forth. Okay, and we just discussed before that ethnographic study is also part of it. And survey is the most widely used method for primary data collection. Right, and it is basically the best, one of the best techniques for gathering descriptive information. And last one is experimental research. So we do this because we want to gather causal information. Okay. All right. Now this one here actually showing us the how we can collect primary data. That includes the research approach, the contact methods, sampling plan, and research instruments. All right. Let's compare the contact methods and briefly, and after that we discuss the sampling plan. Okay, how do we contact the respondents? There are 4 methods in terms of contacting the respondents, right? Mail, telephone, personal, and online. Well, mail is probably a bit hard for us in terms of getting the response. Therefore, the response rate is quite poor, and the cost is quite good actually. Quite relatively speaking, it is actually quite cheap. Okay, but the response rate, the big issue in here is the response rate. Okay, and that's the issue with mail. Okay, and to offset that, to compensate that issue, Marta switched to telephone interview. Okay, and this is what they call as the KT computer-aided telephone interview where the interviewer normally has a computer in front of the interviewer, and randomly they contact a telephone numbers based on the database that they have, and they conduct the interview. And in doing so, they have the guideline on the screen. Okay. So the response rate is still not that good, actually. You can imagine that if you are having dinner, for instance, or if you are in the weekend, enjoying your weekend, suddenly your phone rings and someone wants to get a permission from you to conduct an interview. Well, you may say, oh, I'm sorry. Or if you're good enough appreciating their work, actually, yeah, if it is not that too long, that's fine. Okay, but broadly speaking, the response rate is not that good. Cost, yeah, it's okay. It's getting better. It is still there in terms of cost. Okay? The next one is personal interview, right? Personal interview is quite excellent in terms of getting the response rate. In fact, with the personal interview, we actually can observe the non-verbal language, the body language of the respondent. Okay, so for instance, if we interview someone and we sense that this person does not understand our question, or we may get the response that we don't understand based on the body language, for instance, then we can clarify that. Okay, but it is very expensive. Okay, very expensive. Now, since we have the new development from technology perspective, we conduct the interview. You can also contact the respondents through online. Okay, response rate is good. Okay, we can send the link to the respondents and get the feedback from the respondent. And the cost is excellent as well. Relatively speaking, is quite cheap. Well, the control of the interviewer effects is quite, it's not as excellent as mail. Okay, and the other thing is that we may not be able to confirm from the body language perspective, for instance. Okay. Right. So that's basically online marketing research. And in terms of online marketing research, a lot of marketers basically try to use the internet technology to conduct research, including conducting the online focus group discussion, similar to organizing the webinar. So we have several people joining us on the other ends, and we talk, right? Similar experience to the face-to-face, except this one is delivered through internet. Okay. Just in terms of online survey, we have SurveyMonkey, who has purchased Zoomerang actually. So we can, if you are interested, you can sign up to SurveyMonkey or any other online survey to help your organization or yourself to conduct survey. Right, now the next thing that we need to discuss is the sampling plan. There are 3 decisions that we need to make in terms of sampling plan. Okay, but before we discuss that, let's discuss briefly about what we mean by sample. The key word in sample is the representativeness. Okay, so the respondents that we select should represent the population. Okay, regardless of the number, it has to represent the population, the characteristics of the population. Okay, all right. So the sampling unit is the first decision that we need to make. The sampling unit is actually about who, or the profile of the target respondents, right? The profile of the respondent we need to approach. Okay. Who are they? Probably from demographic perspective or from any other psychographic perspective, and so on and so forth. Okay. And the next one is sample size, which is basically about how many people should be included. Now, this one here we need to look at from the statistic perspective. Okay, and whether we are going to use probability sampling technique. Therefore, if we do that, then we need to really consider the sample size. And then the last one is the sampling procedure. How should people in the sample be chosen? How John, for instance, who lives in certain area, be chosen, not Robert, for instance, right? So that's actually about selecting people. How can we select the respondent? Okay. Right, now in terms of Sampling plan, as discussed before, there are two types of sampling procedure, the probability technique and non-probability technique. The probability technique actually allows us to measure the error, sampling error, and each population member, broadly speaking, has a known chance of being included in the sample, whilst in the case of non-probability, sampling error cannot be measured. Okay. So briefly, there are several techniques in terms of probability that include the simple random sample, stratified, and the other one is cluster sample. Okay. And non-probability includes convenience, judgment, and quota sample. And in saying that, we also have what we call as the snowball sampling technique, where with snowball sampling technique, we have little knowledge, we don't have database, and actually non-probability may be driven by not the availability of the database, or to be more precise, the unavailability of the database. So we get someone as the respondent, and then we talk to that person to get the next respondent, and then to get the next respondent, next respondent, next respondent. That's what we call the snowball sampling technique. Okay. Research instruments, the major one is questionnaire, which is basically the most common instrument used in research. We design the questionnaire, right? We normally ask the respondent's profile, and also we ask the screening questions to the respondents to ensure that we get the correct respondents, right? Until we get a specific question to the topic. Right? And the other one is mechanical instruments such as Nielsen people meter and so on and so forth. Right? All right, and then we implement it. What do we mean by we implement the research plan? We collect the data, okay? We go to the field, collect the data, we process the data, okay? Using certain methods, using certain application or software application, if you like. Qualitative technique may use NVivo or Leximancer, for instance, as a software application to help processing the words that the customers or the respondents have mentioned in the research, that help us clustering the words that they use, so that if we cluster them, it will be more insightful. And those who use quantitative research may consider, for instance, the SPSS, for instance, statistical package for social survey, which is owned by IBM, to help us understanding, doing the data analysis using computer. Well, if the research is quite simple, the number of respondents not a lot, some people can still use the Microsoft Excel, but it doesn't help us generating insights in more detail. Right? And last one is analyzing it, right? So here we slice and dice the numbers, we slice and dice the information, we join one information, the other information, okay? So that's what actually we mean by analyzing, connecting the information to the other information, or exchange the information to the other information in a different project, for instance, okay? So when we do that, we actually analyze, okay? All right, and lastly, we interpret the report. Okay, when we interpret, we interpret and report the findings. When we do that, we need to make sure that that it is related to the problem that we want to solve, so that we can make decision. Okay. All right, so that's basically the main ones. Now, the other thing is just briefly about CRM. Okay, we use CRM, and the CRM, a lot of companies use CRM to help them understanding the customers' purchase. For it, that includes the customer's behavior, customer's purchase, and so on and so forth, right? So that is actually another valuable information that we can collect as well. Okay? All right, and that's basically the marketing research topic for this module. I'll see you in the next module.